Welcome to early 2024. As we bid farewell to one of the best years for video games in the last decade, a new fear reverberates through the industry. Across 1,049 stores, Best Buy has officially started phasing out physical movies, specifically DVDs and Blu-rays. It's clear that the power of streaming has run its predecessors out of town. Netflix has effectively landscaped a new marketplace, undoubtedly causing the collapse of the industry it had revolutionized for 25 years as a worldwide DVD distributor. But unlike the transition from cassettes to CDs, us, the people, might have lost something serious in this new era. Instead of moving from magnetic tape to shinier magnets etched on discs, we've been tricked to forego ownership in the name of convenience. Yes, we pay for fancy phones already. We pay for data plans already. Affluent countries have deep infrastructure for arenas with tens of thousands of attendees to support inconceivable volumes of simultaneous connections. But are these really the same? Are the big companies taking advantage of what we naturally conflate as comparable costs? Phones and internet are considered modern utilities. We need these for work, for banking, for essential services. That makes it too easy to forget. Cable? That was a way to hook directly up to news and entertainment. We couldn't use cable like how we use the internet. We couldn't even choose what we wanted to watch. All we could choose was how many extra packages we could afford, so we could roll the dice even more, assuming we'd always find something we like. With digital media, it's like those same cable companies have diversified and found a way to invite us right back into their metaphorical casino of content. We're dangling on the precipice of renting the rights to enjoy the things we love. Yes, not renting the things, leasing access to those things. And this is not fear-mongering. Just last month, the worst-case scenario became reality when Sony revoked access to 1,318 digital items, mostly TV shows that people had already purchased, because they didn't purchase the media itself. They rented the right to view them, even if for a one-time fee. And that right was surprisingly temporary. If you just so happened to be craving Finding Bigfoot before December 2023 and picked it up on PlayStation, you'd lose access before 2024 even started. Thus, it's justifiable that gamers would be concerned for the same thing. We've seen too many old consoles close up their shops. Thankfully, normally, we can play the games if we've downloaded them, with a few exceptions. But can't things always get worse? I've seen a wide-reaching sentiment that we should also hold our physical games close because they could very well be next. Yes, even though cloud streaming for video games is a much maligned, sore subject, it was also the chief concern of the anti-competition bodies who made the Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition so drawn out. If cloud streaming supersedes genuine ownership, digitally or physically, the rights can certainly be yanked away all too easily. Either way, the major consoles are trending away from the disk drive. By the next console generation, the preferred and presumably more cost-effective choice may be to not include any way to play the physical games of today. But no matter how much the companies try to stop physical games, and no matter how many gamers default to downloading over unwrapping, I'm here to tell you, a truly all-digital future isn't real. Before we dive deeper, I wanted to take a moment to thank you for stopping by. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on any of your thoughts below. I put out these videos just about every week, and I post a lot on threads about ideas and daily YouTube recommendations, so I hope that you stick around, and back to the video. I remember walking into a GameStop a few years after the launch of the last console generation and seeing big bins of Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and GameCube games. Like cassettes after the domination of CDs, stores wanted to get rid of the old and make way for the new as quickly as possible. Unlike the traditional collectibles, be them coins, stamps, or jewelry, there wasn't any conception of long-term value for obsolete video games. GameCubes and Guitar Hero controllers lined the walls of Goodwills instead of being caged up in protective display cases. Today, if you search for classic GameCube games on eBay, you could be paying double their release price. Like vintage Magic the Gathering and Pokemon cards, there is a diverse and growing demand for retro video games in their consoles. Like vinyl records, we may be just at the beginning of an old media format resurgence. For most of the 2000s, every year it became harder and harder to find genuine LPs, even in music shops. But today, brand new records are pressed for the latest album cycles and stocked in Target. And they're often for comparable prices to the peak years of vinyl in the 1970s. The more time passes, the more likely it'll be hard to find original printings and pressings of games that defined the childhood of innumerable gamers. As new gamers enter the scene, they too will want to experience things they've never seen or heard before, like the whir of the disk drive and the iconic startup sounds that followed the satisfying click of the power button. And there will only be more storytellers who want to appreciate the finer details firsthand to spread the history of an impactful and ever more distant era in technology. Think of MKBHD unwrapping an original iPhone. The value may quickly become staggering, especially for things that allow us to be transported into a different time and place. To me, this is extremely telling. No matter what future consoles try to impose on us, the all-digital future won't be all digital if we are still surrounded by the physical games that led up to it. Just like art and fashion, we are always entering a new period of style, but with that, we still carry with us hundreds of years of past trends. Calling the future of video games all digital is like calling the future of cities all condos, as if every other type of residential building will be inevitably demolished in the next 10 years. The demand for physical games has never been larger than now, both due to the volume of games increasing with this latest generation alone, but also due to the expansion of the industry itself, now overtaking all other forms of entertainment. There are new gamers born every day. You know, I think that's also why Nintendo isn't running out of people to sell the Switch and Mario Kart to, since you don't even need to speak a full sentence to start playing. There won't be enough discs for everyone as the population grows, and so the discs we already have will continue to increase in rarity and desirability. If there's one thing capitalism can guarantee, it's where there's money to be made, opportunities to profit from. There will always be companies doing their best to capture it. Big companies might pause the production of physical games. But frankly, to me, it feels like that might just turn into a Disney Vault situation. Intentional scarcity, a waiting period until the next vinyl becomes trendy again. Either way, in this ambiguity, we have the steadfast resurgence of collector's editions, now being made from publishers that didn't exist a decade ago, like Special Reserve, Limited Run, and Super Rare. Special Reserve Games was founded in 2016, specifically to combat the corporate whims of digital licenses. It is incredibly direct in its fight against the all-digital future, and they have the capabilities to print physicals for every modern console. Not only that, they create official collector's editions, leveraging the lost arts of booklet, jacket, and manual design. Limited Run Games has much the same mantra: forget the big guys. Founded just a year before Special Reserve in 2015, again, both of these companies haven't even celebrated their 10-year anniversary yet. Based on their trajectory and growth metrics, physicals are indeed getting more traction and a much more lucrative business model. Come here and we'll create magical, collectible physicals that work both on the display case and in your machines. Custom, official, modern or retro. Instead of relegated to the discount bins and bargain indie storefronts of the Xbox 360, Limited Run is able to price things at or above the digital counterparts and sell out their stock consistently. Beyond that, by following the Kickstarter-like model of limited release windows and pre-orders, Limited Run has a pretty solid way to guarantee longevity, both from a manufacturing side and from a profitability side. Finally, we have Super Rare Games, founded in 2018. Instead of focusing on a wide variety of consoles, Super Rare is, by its own account, Europe's most prolific physical Switch publisher. In some ways, for me, this operation builds more confidence, as game developers can consider them for both debut release windows and for limited special editions. Although, as a game developer, it's probably not too difficult to get in contact with any of these three organizations. Super Rare's homepage specifically calls for developers or digital publishers to get in contact with them. I'm sure most people who visit their main page are likely to see it. That can be very inspiring, either for entering the market or for those who are afraid of this all-digital nightmare. On top of that, they have a bright and easy-to-access careers page, which broadcasts their status as a bona fide indie game publisher, specifically for 6 released titles and 11 announced titles. Again, it might not be that tricky to reach out to any of these groups to ask for publishing availability or career paths. These are just 3 of the valiant warriors pushing the vanguard of the deliberately undigital future. There's more that we won't be diving into today that tell much the same story, like 2016's Signature Edition, 2017's Strictly Limited Games, 2018's First Press Games, and 2019's Premium Edition games. From the outside looking in, it appears that the mid to late 2010s opened the gates for a windfall of new indie-driven physical-first businesses. It's hard to deny the momentum, not just from one company, but from an entire industry. Okay, so far we've covered how it's easy to understand why people would be scared of this concept of an all-digital future. We've seen how recent examples of lost licenses with Sony and lost DVDs with Best Buy and Netflix have stoked fears to all-time heights. But we've also seen how the retro video game market is alive and thriving and seems to be a true moneymaker from resale value alone. As a market indicator, if trading card game sales and GameCube eBay listings are anything to go off of, we won't see the end of physical sales of existing games. And now we've explored 3 delightfully promising companies whose entire purpose is to support active video game development and distribution. They all vow to continue on the path of physical releases, and more than that, they seem to be exponentially expanding and becoming more viable as consumers enter the market and more businesses see the benefits in bespoke collectible releases. There's still one more massive reason why we may be better off staying optimistic about the future and shudder our fears for the all-digital, one that might be growing more explosively and more prominently than everything we've mentioned so far. Emulators. In late 2019, Analog, the American company now synonymous with stylish, Apple-esque emulators, announced its flagship Pocket. Although Analog had been pumping out quality hardware since it was established in 2011, this was the beginning of a new wave. Immediately, the Pocket broke into the mainstream, becoming the peak of online discussion revolving around the company and its cutting-edge hardware. It was only the beginning of a new boom in handheld emulators, shepherded by, as can be expected, these early luxurious and expensive incarnations. As the 2010s eclipsed, the industry fell in love with a console overtly mimicking the adored Game Boy Pocket and its contemporaries. The Analog Pocket, unlike other emulators in its form factor, used hardware emulation, so it could easily reproduce the experience of the Game Boys in the early 2000s. Those other emulators could play just about anything you threw at them, even if they prioritized lightweight generations of handhelds instead of the intensive and technically possible 3D console generations. Nearly 5 years later, we were graced with Analog's latest vision, the Analog Duo in Analog 3D. Breathing new life into the arcade and somewhat underserved 64 generation, Analog is a declaration. We are only at the tip of the iceberg. A new world of collectible and practical consoles has arrived. These are truly modern, physical emulation machines, creatively engineered to both handle the requirements of the original line of the 1990s and 2000s game releases, and many, I would argue more and more, power the dreams of the homebrew entertainment systems of the 2020s. It's trivial to find examples of dedicated gamers stressing the limits of emulator software and hardware to run everything but the kitchen sink. And it's more than that. Analog and the other companies in the emulator industry are simultaneously supporting top-of-the-line retro emulation and in some cases shooting to directly wrap the original hardware in a package of next-generation chipsets. The goal is no compromise, backward and forward compatible. Today, we're in an unprecedented age of hardware competition. It's not one country or one company. It's a worldwide race to relive and recapture not only the game generations of the past, but way more, to redevelop and re-architect those visions so that, like playing a remastered game from 20 years ago, we're playing re-articulated devices that represent what the gamer today would wish for in a Game Boy, an N64, even a Nintendo DS of the future. Since 2020 alone, there have been numerous new contenders in the realm of powerhouse emulator manufacturing. In China, Ein, Miyu, and Neo have become seriously recognizable in the field of both retro emulation and modern handhelds. Together, there's an impressive, almost unbelievable range of options to choose from. With all of these companies considered, there's usually a new machine to buy more than once a year. For better or worse, we've passed by that age of yearly or generational cycle refreshes. If you're interested in learning more, I highly recommend Wolfden, who posts videos on this subject quite regularly. But seriously, Just this week, the Aya Neo Flip DS was announced, which is of particular interest to me. This is a stunning reinvention of the Nintendo DS in a way I haven't seen before. More than that, it runs Windows in a beautiful form factor, at least based on the marketing. Yes, unlike the retro emulators discussed before, it's unlikely that we'll be able to insert the original discs and cartridges into the Flip. As a Windows machine, however, there's no end to the capabilities that the end user can make for it. Thankfully, the concern for playing physical games or ripping our existing copies of games is becoming less relevant every year. From mod ships to action replay, Game Shark-like hacking devices, it's only a matter of time before we have the ability to unleash both the console and the cartridges. Just this month, the MiG Switch, a controversial but potentially legitimate Nintendo Switch ROM maker and player, is making waves with the emulation crowd. If the hype is real, this tool will be an all-in-one to fill in the gaps in any Switch owner's physical collection. Of course, this might be more of an exception than a genuine game changer. Reddit posts about its US distributor have already been taken down, and it's hard to follow the path of its development. Although we know in the US it's planned to be priced from $65 to $75, it's unclear if it will be launched anytime soon, or at all. To learn more about this, I recommend checking out MVG's video published on Tuesday. To go back to the world of the legitimate, tried and true, let's talk a bit more about Windows in the Pocket PC style of devices. Since 2021, there's been yet another entirely new category of consoles that has radically shifted the console landscape. No, the Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch are not the only consoles on the market. Yes, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo are still the main entities defining what a physical game looks like, at least for now. But as of 2021, we have considerable, and for many, vastly more compelling and user-customizable offerings from at least 3 more, soon to be 4, other major companies. I'm referring to, of course, the influence and prominence of Valve's Steam Deck. After trying so many times over the past decade to manufacture a popular physical machine, it's fair to say Valve has finally done it. The company behind the world's largest digital video game marketplace has deployed a dedicated device to play them. More than that, it comes with a custom Linux operating system and supports a full Windows installation. It can be plugged into a dock system, which allows it to be used as a full-blown PC with all the expected peripheries. That means there are virtually limitless possibilities for how we can use and expand on its features. And Windows comes pre-baked on the Steam Deck's competitors, the Asus ROG Ally and Lenovo Legion Go. Each of these has its own advantages, usually in the specifics of its layout or the strengths of its display. For most reviewers, it's hard to pick a standout winner. This entire group of units is unquestionably on the rise, with notable popularity and success. So much so that this week, on January 4th, MSI, another Goliath in the world of PC parts, started teasing its own iteration of the Steam Deck form factor. When CES starts in a couple days, we'll almost definitely be introduced to this latest version of that Steam Deck idea, which itself saw a revision late last year with the Steam Deck OLED. The all-digital future is more fear than reality. The only thing we can say with any confidence is that Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo might do away with the discs and cartridges that they've used in their consoles when they make future consoles. If that did happen, they'd be missing out on the lucrative physical markets for both resale and limited edition runs. Instead of finding ways to reuse unsold physical media, they'd be giving up. Luckily for us, that wouldn't be enough to stop physical games. As we've covered, there are a myriad of companies taking the responsibility from them, particularly for indies. Not only that, there are now countless physical console manufacturers that prevent us from being solely dependent on the big three. From retro and modern emulation to self-contained PCs, handhelds especially are rapidly harnessing both attention and power. It won't be long before these devices are the go-to for on-the-go gamers who used to lug around a laptop or cram experiences onto a smartphone, although smartphone emulation has also come such a long way. The all-digital future is not what it sounds like. Yes, it's a scary concept, but what makes it scary is that it indicates a lack of control. It makes us remember that big corporations usually get away with whatever they can to make more profits. It's just another bullet point in a long list of anti-user practices that cut down their bottom line. But we shouldn't be scared. We're not powerless. No company can take away the games we have. No company can stop us from making more physicals of both old and new titles. No company can stop us from using the machines we have to do unique and amazing things. We are at the beginning of a new gold rush for limited runs, for emulators, and for gaming handhelds. A new rush for physicals instead of top to bottom, from bottom to top. We shouldn't be scared. We're fighting back, and no matter what the biggest companies of the past do, they can't win. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll be back next week with another new video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below if you haven't already. I'm experimenting with a slightly different format this time around. Curious if anybody has any thoughts on it. But that's it for now. Cheers.